I'm Dane Rose, and this is an exciting exploration for me because it is the accumulation or fruit of more than 2,000 hours of exploration, which for me largely comes through articulation. The conscious mind of our culture is founded on language. And so without words to hold attention, we are unconscious. And the work that I'm exploring here is largely unconscious work in our culture, precisely because we don't explore it. We don't talk about it in depth. So let's get started on the general focus of addiction. And what I'd like to suggest is that addiction, at its core, equals compulsion. So the compulsion to ingest a certain substance, the compulsion to do a certain thing, the compulsion to think a certain thing, the compulsion to feel a certain thing created by those thoughts, the compulsion to look away. The compulsion essentially is consciousness control. So addiction equals compulsion equals consciousness control. And what we're doing, the function of an addiction, is to turn consciousness away from a terrain within the psyche that the ego, the sense that you and I call you and me, that the ego is unable to deal with. Now, one could say unwilling to deal with. But compulsion is not fun. And this is one of the ways that we can look at it as a dis-ease. It's not fun. Whether it's watching pornography, whether it is having sex, whether it is taking cocaine, it is not fun to do these things compulsively. There is an underlying fear that is at, just below or at the level of awareness around compulsion. And the addict, each of us, knows that fear. We know that little anxiety, like we're getting near that terrain, and now we're through it. It's like we've injected the cocaine, we've gotten to the point where we're going to have sex. It's like, am I going to have sex? It's like, yes, good. Don't go back there. It's consciousness control. It's consciousness control. And the purpose of consciousness control, since a functional ego is a lens. We can look at this sense of the larger self. Let's take a lifetime. We could say, this is my lifetime, it's me. But our ego, our awareness, our sense of me right now is focused like right now. It's on this video. It's not on being 3 years old. But when you were 3-year-old, your consciousness was focused there. And if you think of the inner ages as rings of a tree, then you realize that a 200-year oak tree has the first ring still inside. It has the third ring still inside. It's just not exposed to the primary lens of awareness. The primary lens of awareness is outside. It's in the cambium layer, the bark. You look at it and you say, this is the oak tree. But in order for that to be the oak tree, in the whole history of the oak tree, the first year had to have occurred. It's part of the process. You look at a DVD and you say, I'm at hour 1 minute, 1 hour and 20 minutes. But the laser started at the beginning and worked its way to 1 hour and 20 minutes. And the first minute of the DVD is still there. And it's part of the narrative. The narrative doesn't make a whole lot of sense as this is a movie if you delete the beginning. And so what we're looking at in consciousness control is we have the larger self, and we have a good way of looking at it is a zoom-in lens, and that's called the present moment. And the zoom-in lens says, this is what's going on right now. And you can turn your mind through memory. That's rewind on the DVD back to like this happened and this happened and this happened. You can turn your lens back, and you can turn your lens to the future. We call that imagination, probability fields, possibility fields. You can turn your lens to the future. And within this phenomena of conscious participation, we can even change the future and the past, and we do it all the time. We move sideways into parallel realities where this part of the past, we tune down this part of the past, we balloon up, and it wasn't how we actually felt at 3 years old. At 3-year-old, we were crying and feeling miserable. What was this, that, and the other? And then we look back and we remember the ice cream cone, and oh, wasn't that sweet? Isn't that a nice, cute little dress? And we tune up the dress, we tune up the ice cream cone, we tune down the emotional abandonment, etc., and we create a different version of the past. And so we're able to turn imagination to different possible futures. We're able to participate in what we call our reality. And what makes it our reality? It's this choice of where do we direct our lens. Now, if you're a driver in a car and you're looking forward and you're driving forward, you want to be looking at where's the car on the left, where's the car on the right, where are the white lines, where's the yellow lines, and that's a useful functional lens. So we say that's an intelligent driver. But what happens when we're in this addictive state of consciousness control is we reach this terrain where the ego cannot stand, cannot bear what's called a pain threshold. Now, this is a very dangerous thing because within the framework of all of our reality, there's parts of things that go very well, and we say, oh, I like that. It's like, I had the idea for this necklace, 10 years ago, and I like this necklace. It was me. I went to this woman who hammered copper wire. I picked symbols that meant something to me, and I had this necklace hammered just the way I like it, and I had it very simple. I like that. I like that I did that. So that's a bit I can look at because it brings pleasure. And one of the core aspects of our nature as human beings is we like to feel good. We don't like to feel bad. And there's a thermometer. There's a thermometer where, depending on where we turn our attention, we can feel good or we can feel bad or we can feel very bad. But there's this phenomena in the pain thermometer, which is, and it's important to understand what pain is. Pain is a separation from, and a need for, a longing for, a desire for something in particular. So we have, I'm an opium addict. I'm an opium addict. I long for opium. Now, if I've got my opium at the appropriate dosage, I don't long for opium. I'm very contented. Nice up. I like that feeling. I know that feeling. That feeling is going to last for 3 hours. I can just relax because I'm covered. There's no set. Now, I might dimly, over the opium haze, long for a reality where I could feel this good, without opium. But if my goal is simply survival to get through the day, I'm not going to focus on that while I'm high on opium. I'm going to focus on the fact that I've got my fix for at least 3 hours. So I am great, and I'm kind, and I'm generous, and I like that because I've got my fix. But there's a threshold of pain, And it's worth mentioning at this point in understanding this kind of threshold of pain and where it comes from. There's a threshold of pain where the gap is so big between what we long for, could be our human need. There's a threshold of pain. In other words, we all need air, right? So let's get real here. We all have human needs. Maslow identified a hierarchy of human needs, and air would be top on the list. It's part of survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem. So we all need air, and I'm cutting off the air supply. Well, let's pretend we're cutting off the air supply. You can actually do it and maybe manage to talk, but I can't carry on the video. So let's just pretend we're cutting off the air supply. And we need air to keep our body alive, to keep the brain cells alive. We long to maintain our identity. This is me. I don't want to experience the unknown. Now, this is tied deeply to chauvinism, to trauma, which I'll get in later. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the feminine, the fear of the mystery. I don't want to die. What is it you don't want? I don't want the known reality to die. I don't want that which I know, that which I'm certain of, to end. Why? Because I'm terrified of the unknown. I don't want it to end. Or because I have things to do. I want this and this and this and this. So if we threaten that which we long for, the known, the familiar, the goal next week, if we threaten the familiar, we feel pain. Oh my gosh. And we feel fear of pain. Fear is predicated on pain. Fear is pain in the future. Because we've all experienced time. And so, if you have an older brother that's beating on you, for example, he beat on you last week, and then 2 weeks before that he beat on you, and then he beat on you the day before that, and now he's coming towards you with that face that he has when he beats you. And you are terrified because you're 6 years old, and he's 12, he's 15, and nobody's around. Now, you're remembering, you're saying that look is correlated with that behavior. I know that look. It's correlated with that behavior. You're looking in the past, and you're remembering it. You're putting the past back together. You're remembering a pattern. You're putting a pattern together. That face alone, big, giant, little me, and then you're taking the pattern in the past and you're putting it into the future. You're saying, in about 5 minutes, my pain threshold, my desire to feel like I am a worthy member of this family, my longing, my need for love and belonging, my need for security and survival, my need to feel good about myself, to have self-esteem, my need for self-esteem is there. I long for that. I want that. But what I see projected onto the future, based on the momentum of what's happening right now, is not that. What I see projected onto the future is pain, is a huge gap between what I long for, what I need, what I desire, and what's coming. What's coming is a gap, violation, hatred, beating, humiliation, helplessness, a feeling of complete worthlessness, a feeling that I'd rather die than face this pain. And this is the important thing. There's a pain threshold at which the horror, the pain, the loneliness, when your big brother's beating the shit out of you, the message that he's beating into you is, I want nothing to do with you. I don't care about you. Because I know I'm inflicting the worst amount of pain possible, available, maybe avoiding bruises because I'm going to have to lie. and say that this was all in your head. Said, I know what that's about. And I want you to feel absolutely miserable. And that is my intention. And the mirror neurons, the empathic, nature of a 6-year-old, etc., who wants to please, who wants to fit into the family, is saying, what do you want me to feel? What do you want me to do so that I'll be welcome in this family? And his older brother is saying, I'll tell you what I want you to do. I want you to feel as worthless, as shitty, as lonely, as humiliated as you possibly can. Because, this is not necessarily there in the 6-year-old's awareness, but because I feel that way. Because that's what Dad did to me. That's what Mom and Dad do to me when you're around, when you get the attention. I feel completely worthless. I feel burdened. I feel, and I want you to feel what I feel. I want you to feel extraordinary levels of pain. And the empathic nature of that, that innocence is partly trying to please. Within the child, particularly, the whole program, in the maturation process, you go from sympathy, which is saying yes to everything. I said yes to whatever it is I'm being born into. And I'm completely helpless as a 2-year-old in all of that. I'm completely helpless in this dynamic. I said yes. And I want to please. What do I have to do to survive, feel secure, feel love and belonging in this family? What do I have to do? And the agendas are not always, you have to grow into a healthy human being and be happy. Wouldn't that be nice? The agendas are mixed. You have to be worse than me. You have to make me look smart by being dumb. How about that? You have to take the butt of the joke because you're the youngest and we need to feel superior. That means you have to pretend to be stupid, even if you're not. So you've got to do this and this. And the child is, okay, until the pain gets too big. Because the child, like every human being, of course, wants to feel survival, security, love and belonging, etc. But in a sociopathic cult, in a sociopathic environment, they're getting hit with pain. Now, at the point on this thermometer, it's an endless continuum. Every single human being has a point. Some people have high pain thresholds. Some people have low pain thresholds. This corresponds, by the way, to sensitivity. If you're a microphone that picks up every little noise, you are a sensitive microphone. And if you are a sensitive microphone and you can pick up every little small noise, an ant walks and you hear it because you're tuned in at that high volume. Then if someone screams into that microphone, it goes into reverb. You've all heard the amplifier, the mic, and you're in a tailspin where it's a feedback loop and you're gone. That's a good example of a traumatic moment. When a feedback loop within the body, within the psyche, within the consciousness reaches a point where it's getting louder and there's nothing to stop it. And what do you have to do in a concert, in a rock concert like that? You got to pull out the microphone or turn the volume totally off and then slowly turn it up again. Well, that's called dissociation. That's called pain management. It's like, yank that cord out. We can't, if a giant stadium speaker went into screech reverb, everyone would go into that reactive moment. And to a certain extent, nature has provided this safety loop of just, cover your ears, whatever it is. I've got a broken elbow, so, we're doing this one-handed. Cover your ears. You can't deal with this. Pull the microphone, cut the power, do whatever it takes to stop what? The pain, to stop the data coming in. And here's what a feedback looks like in consciousness. I want to do whatever my brother wants so he won't hurt me. There's only one thing my brother wants. He wants me to feel pain. I don't want to feel pain. So I got to please him. I got to do whatever he wants because I have no power. What does he want? He wants to hurt me, but I don't want to be hurt. And you're in a loop. You're in a loop, and the pain is coming closer, and he takes the first blow, and it's getting louder. What do I have to do? What do I have to do? There's only one thing your brother wants. He wants you to die so that you stop taking away the attention that has starved him of his sense of love and belonging, of his sense of feeling like he has value. His needs have been starved in an emotionally malnourished culture because of you. And he wants you to die. And so that's a good example of a traumatic feedback loop. Because when the little boy looks up and says, please, I will do anything, just don't hurt me. And it's like, you don't understand. I want you to die. If you will die, I will stop hurting you. And then you go into the survival instinct comes in, and you've got multiple programs. The survival of the pleaser is now being turned. It's like, if you would really like to help me, you'll go kill yourself. And this message, by the way, is a very loud message, and it correlates with suicide. It correlates with suicide. You know, when you have a billionaire who doesn't want to get a divorce because they were in California when they got married and were madly in love, when you got a billionaire who loathes the shadow expression of herself, she hates the part of herself that her husband expresses. She hates it. And she doesn't want to give up half her money in a cult that defines value with money and all. She doesn't want to give it up. She doesn't want it. And so you have this dynamic. It's like, I can't get a divorce, and I can't do what I want, you fucking son of a bitch. And, there's some part of her that doesn't care a damn about him. That doesn't care a damn about him. She just wants him to vanish without alimony. And that's what it is, because she's defined her value as being all about money and status, and she likes being on the Forbes 400 list as one of the few women billionaires. Like, that's something. I'm really special because I'm a woman billionaire, and I did it, and no man's going to take that away from me. I'm a card-carrying feminist, and you're not going to do it. But there's the California divorce law. That son of a bitch. That son of a bitch. He's going to take my value away. I wish he'd die. But if he knows that, then he'd get a divorce and take my. So I've got to, but you shit. It's like, I wish I could hire a hitman, and some do. But in that dynamic where it's like, I want you to die. That's what I want. Because you're not important. What's important is this hunger, this separation from, I want to be valuable, and I'm in a fucked up cult that only will value me if I beat out this, and I have to do this, and I've got to do that. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to accomplishment. I'm addicted to money. That's the only way to keep the pain away. Constant message that I'm not good enough, that I'm not valuable enough. Because that's what the 6-year-old hears, of course, when he's bullied. When his brother would really like to kill him, if he could get away with it. And mom, you see that this is the problem with need. That the 12-year-old wants to kill him so that he'd get love and attention. But if he knows if he kills the precious golden one, he's not going to get love and attention. He's going to be hated for the rest of his life. So he hates the little kid even more for that. So we've got pain here. So this is the pain threshold, and in the pain, in the pain thermometer, every human being has a point where they shift focus from a positive focus. Now, what's a positive focus? Well, I'd like to be an honest human being. I'd like to teach people about addiction. That would be nice. I'd like to make my wife feel happy today. I'd like to grow the garden. These are positive intentions. It's like I'd like to go out and clean the house and all this. So these are things I'd like to be. I'd like to do this. I'd like to be this way. I'd like to feel this way. These are positive intentions. Now, at some point in the beatings, at some point in the opium withdrawal, at some point in the sex withdrawal, at some point in the emotional withdrawal, at some point in the pain, this positive focus has a pivotal switch. It's like it's over here, positive, this is what I want. At some point, the pain gets so deep that the switch flips. And the switch is now set at whatever I have to do to not feel pain is my absolute number one priority. And this is where murders, this is where rapes, this is where theft, this is where stabbings, this is where intense, seemingly irrational behavior occurs. My pain is so high. 1. 2. No one is helping me with it. You see, in order for pain to reach this threshold, one has to be in a sociopathic environment. Now, what is a sociopathic environment? It's an environment that's numb. So it's so numb that nobody knows you're in pain. Now, why don't they know? Empathic cultures, they know. It's no. So we've got isolation. We've got numbness. We've got willful ignorance. We've got, that's not my problem. We've got, who cares about those people? They're not our family. We've got, they're black, and so, the fact that they're in pain, well, it's what they deserve. We've got, they're Chinese. They're Chinese, they're not as valuable as we are. That's a little kid. Of course he's in pain, but he'll get over it. You've got ageism. You've got sexism. That's a woman losing out on some of that money. But if a man lost billions, oh my goodness, that's a big deal. But this is a woman. She doesn't define her whole value. She can still have babies. You've got sexism, you've got ageism, you've got moneyism, you've got racism. And so it doesn't matter. It all boils down to, that's not my problem. And of course, it isn't initially. The pain rises and rises and rises and rises. And everyone, for that to occur, for pain to chronically rise beyond the pain threshold, there has to be a lot of people, and there has to be memes that allow this. For example, the homeless that you drive by every single day. You don't think some of them are approaching that pain threshold? You don't think some of them, the homeless person that can't get a job because she can't get a shower, and she can't get a shower because she doesn't have a house. And she can't get a house because she doesn't have money. She doesn't have money because she can't get a job. Now, believe me, I've been in this cult, and I know the thoughts that you've already woven to define all the reasons why you shouldn't help that woman. She's got to do it for herself, right? That's a meme. That's a cult meme. It's our cult meme. It's what we do to say it's not my problem, it's her problem. It's her problem that she was sexually abused at age 6. It's her problem that her mother, terrified and not knowing how to fend for herself in a cult that tolerates that in that generation. It's her problem that her mother said secretly, I don't like this happening to my 6-year-old daughter, but I'm glad it's not me tonight. And it's, of course, the 6-year-old girl's problem. And it's the teenage girl's problem that she's sexually promiscuous because her father taught her how to have sex. And then, of course, it's the teenage girl's problem that she had a 14-year-old pregnancy because she was sexually promiscuous in a cult that doesn't teach sexual education. And it is, of course, her problem that we don't teach other children in an emotionally illiterate culture how to deal with any of this. It's her problem that she was humiliated to feel unwelcome in school, so she dropped out of school to hang out where she was welcome, with older men who wanted to fuck 15-year-old girls. And it's her problem that a cult teaches men to dishonor their own inner feminine to such a degree that their femininity, the man's femininity, has no value. To such a degree that he would find it impossible to define or understand why the 15-year-old girl's femininity has any value. So why shouldn't he reduce his pain after all that's been done to him by fucking a 15-year-old girl? Until he feels bad about himself or is afraid his wife is going to understand and gives her a little cash and says, "Get the hell out of here. I'm done with you. Don't you ever come round here again, or I'm going to kill you." And she understands that there is no place that she has any value. There's no place she has any value. There is not a single adult in this cult that is actually going to protect the innocence of a child. There are grown-ups in denial and in self-centeredness and busyness and absorption and trying to feel good about themselves. There's grown-ups, but there's no adult who's going to protect the innocence of that child. And when she knows she has no value, because that message is storming through her body from 50,000 directions, and everyone who looks at her says, we don't want to end up like her. I don't want you. Study hard, because you shouldn't end up like her, because she's worthless. We're not going to help her. We're not going to help her. We're going to avoid her. We're going to shame her by saying, and we're going to criticize our children more. You study hard in school. Don't do that. And because of the fear of the pain that's in that 15-year-old, that 18-year-old. And as that woman grows up, knowing that her one value is to be used and to be hated, as she takes substances to avoid that pain, that's also her fault, right? And it has nothing to do with the punitive, war on drugs, which is not a war on drugs. You don't fight powder. You fight human beings trying to manage pain. It's a war on the American people. To shame and attack them for having pain. In other words, we're going to cause you pain. We're going to take away your father for smoking weed. And you're going to grow up feeling like a shitty boy because your biology says if you had any value, there would be a masculine presence by your side telling you what to do with your life. But you don't have any value. Because the rational mind says, well, yeah, he's in prison. My government stole my dad. But that's not a problem. Because it's not the rational mind that is deciding that you're worthless. It's the biological mind. It's the 5 billion-year-old mind that says, I'm safe as a pack mammalian member of a tribe, of a herd, of a group. I'm safe when I've got a protective masculine and a protective feminine side that are modeling the template of masculine and feminine energy. And so it's saying, I'm not safe. It must be for one reason: I don't have value. Now, the message, I don't have value, creates extraordinary amounts of pain. Oh, I know what to do. What did Dad do when he was in extraordinary amounts of pain? He smoked weed. Oh, and what does my government do when I'm managing extraordinary amounts of pain? They put me in a concrete cell that ensures that my pain goes up. They cause pain to the citizens around me by telling them I'm no longer a human being. They silence the voice of those who know something about this by I can't vote anymore. I can't speak in the political arena because I've got pain. They create damage in the next generation. They charge their own people $80,000 a year to cause me pain. That's what they do. They cause pain while attacking me for taking pain medication. That's the kind of cult we're in. Now, is that what I long for? Is that what I desire? Is that what we need? Is that what we need? Survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem. No, my government has just spent $80,000 a year on me to destroy my self-esteem, my sense of love and belonging. I can't get hugs anymore, this and that and the other. I'll get fucked up the ass if I'm even mildly affectionate to other men. And humiliated for needing human needs, emotionality, love and connection. Now, do you think there's some kind of a gap between the culture we long for, the world we long to be born into? Was it a cult that destroyed families, that defined people based on how much paper, little bits of paper that were supposed to be symbols of value? It's a very bizarre cult when the goose that lays the golden eggs, that's what people are, by the way. People are the goose that lays the golden egg. Now, we've defined money, bits of paper, credit cards, as money, little numbers in a bank account. We've said this is money, and this is a golden egg. This is very, very important in our cult. So, well, who creates the idea of money? People. Who creates the credit cards? People. Who creates the little idea of numbers? People. People just invented numbers. This is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 2, this is... Where did that come from? It came from people. So people create the golden egg. And, in the typical travesty of evil, the worship of false calves, the golden calf, the worship of false gods. The false god is when the egg becomes more valuable than the goose. You remember that's the whole narrative of the golden goose. Someone was really greedy. So they wanted to murder the goose to get all the eggs. They want to kill the people to get even more money. Starve them to death, work them harder, do this. Who cares about? We want their money. Well, what exactly is the good of a world without people, or without people who have any money to spend? Henry Ford, when he was creating the Model T, first he was sued for reducing the cost of the Model T. It's like almost every year he'd half the price. When Henry Ford started the Ford Motor Company, we're talking about $2,000-$3,000 for an exotic luxury car for the rich. And Ford cut it in half. So now it's only $1,500. And, why are you doing that? The shareholders that are wanting to make as much money in buying Ford stock as possible, we're furious. And then what are you doing cutting it again? Now it's $700. Now it's $300, you fucking idiot. You've got no competition. Raise the price. Who cares about people? We want our money. And so they sued him for cutting the price. Then he did the horrible thing. It would be called communism in the 50s. Ford did the horrible thing of giving everyone a $5 an hour raise when everyone else was paying $2.50. And see, Ford wasn't focused on bits of paper. Ford was focused, a little bit like Gates later with, a desktop in every home, etc., a computer in every desktop, a computer in every home. That's what Ford was focused on. He wasn't focused on money. He was focused on transportation. And his logic went like this. No one can afford, or 95% of our population cannot afford a $3,000 car. One, in part because the same rich people making the $3,000 cars are paying as little as possible to most of their employees and all that, so they can't afford it. So that was the first thing. They can't afford a $3,000 car, but they can afford a car for $148. I believe that's the last price of the Model T. $148, not $3,000, not $1,500, not $700, not $500, $148. They can afford that. But even so, how can every Ford employee buy a Model T? By doubling their wages. And so his goal was not to create as much money as possible. It was to facilitate freedom of movement for the American people. That's someone who understands that the people who create money, are more valuable than the money they create. He was sued, first for lowering the price of the Model T, and then he was sued again for giving his workers a raise, because he was not following the cult dogma. He was not following the dogma of capitalism, which Milton Friedman will tell you all about, and it's a very beautiful dogma in many ways. Like any system, it has its pluses. It's better than coerced communism. But it wasn't better than Ford or what's happening with Tesla. Why did Elon Musk, with the number one car ever built by Consumer Reports, the Model S, the car that won, why is he creating the Model 3 to cannibalize the more expensive car? It's not about the money. Why did he start a rocket company whenever? It's not about the money. It's about people, and people hate him. You should listen, to MSNBC. Oh, his tweet was, here's a man that is successfully creating solar power, making the the species interplanetary, accelerating the pace of electric vehicles more than anyone else, and who has made 3 of the safest, best-rated, best-loved vehicles in the entire history of the automotive industry. And he is absolutely hated. And who of course, pays for all of his haters to come on and be interviewed? You see, the car is so good, he's never spent a single dime advertising it in any magazine or any TV outlet. Now, do you think Ford is pissed that he's got $380,000, 380,000 reservations for Model 3 before it's even built yet? Because he cares about people? You think they're pissed? You think they don't bribe? So the financial system says, we're not going to pay you advertising money for our crappy vehicles unless you dish shit out on Tesla. That's as clear as it gets. So let's hate them for this, hate them for this. Oh, they're going to go bankrupt here. People love them because they understand. They understand it's not about the money for Elon. Otherwise, you don't take $440 million and bet it on three species-oriented projects that you are almost certain to fail at. Elon said from the start he thought SpaceX, Tesla, and Solar City would probably fail. But why not die trying to do something good for the planet? Why not? And so he gave it a shot. So he works 100-hour weeks. So he sleeps in the factory. So he lowers the price of the car again and again, and he makes it better, and he lowers it again, so that there are more sustainable vehicles in the planet. And working on self-driving to improve driving safety. It's not about the money. An intelligent person doesn't kill people to extract a little bit of short-term money. They understand that people are the golden goose. But we're in a cult that is not defined as a populist cult. It's not defined as a people cult. We don't say we are the people's cult, we are a peopleist. We say we are a capitalist cult. We are a capitalist cult, where capital comes before people in so many arenas, and it's painful. If you're a person, I mean, the money, of course, doesn't care. The digits doesn't have feelings. The credit card doesn't have feelings. But if you're a person, that matters. And every single homeless person of the millions of homeless people in the United States today understands that they are less important than money. They understand they would be treated 10 to 20 times better if they had money. They understand they wouldn't be under a bridge if they had money. Because they are not valuable. Their money is valuable. The goose is not valued. The golden egg is salivated over. This is insane. It's not scientific. You know, a scientist would probably side with the idea, let's see, if the golden egg is valuable, if money is valuable, then people who are able and willing to make money, and anyone can in the right condition, people who are willing and able to make money must be more valuable than the money they create. Because if the people were all exterminated, first of all, the billionaires wouldn't have anything to buy. If you've got $10 trillion and you say, hey, get me a cab, but the cabbie is dead because you killed him by investing in this chemical company, and you say, hey, I want this, and they're dead too. I want fly me to Luxembourg. Well, the pilot is dead because you didn't value people. Now you've got all the cash, and that's ultimately, it's important to be aware that if you value money more than people, which is an irrational equation, which we haven't fully tested, and you follow that, you give that to an AI, it will exterminate every human being to get their money. But the money, of course, has zero value. It is a symbol. It is a proxy. It's not valuable. It's only valuable if you can invite other people to do something valuable for you. The people are valuable. So it's, but that's, of course, part of our pain. So this threshold of pain management is enormous. It's an enormous threshold. And it's something that we need to be aware of, because when people hit that threshold, it's a biological threshold, and it's triggered by the survival instinct of the human animal. The human animal has many brains. One of them is called the reptilian brain, the brain stem, the reptilian brain. It's the ancient brain, 200 million years old. It's what kept crocodiles alive. Now, the reptilian brain has a little bit of mathematics at its back, and it says something like this. It says pain has been rising. That's a biological fact. Yep, it has. It says nobody's doing anything about it. The empathic brain has been betrayed. I need help. Sorry, can't help you, ma'am. Sorry, can't help you, man. So the empathic brain has been betrayed. Sorry, can't help you, ma'am. Sorry, don't have any money. Yes, I've got a $500 suit and briefcase, but I don't have any money. The empathic brain has been lied to, betrayed. Oh, I'll give you some tomorrow. Oh, I forgot again. It's like it's been betrayed. It's been lied to. It's been walked by too many times. The empathic brain hits a point of despair. I'm worthless. We already know that from my whole childhood. I'm worthless because I don't have any bits of paper. You could say that I'm somewhat valuable and that a few people are trying to lie to me to pretend that they'd like to give me money, but of course they couldn't possibly. They've got to buy their Starbucks that day. Can't help me out from under a bridge and all that. So the empathic brain is being lied to. And the reptilian brain is in reserve for this purpose. It says your pain is rising. No one is bringing it down. This is crocodile terrain. What is crocodile terrain? It is sociopathic. You don't rely on the empathic brain. You don't rely on the transcendent brain. You don't rely even on raw emotion. You rely on cold strategy. The reptilian brain says, look, hon, you are surrounded by alligators. They don't see you as a human being. They see political dogma. They see number signs. They see irrational theories. They see blame and judgment and hostility. They do not see you. You, empathic brain, are not safe in this cult. You are surrounded by alligators who are not seeing you. There's only one person that's going to get you out of this, an alligator. Now, I've got fight, I've got flight, I've got freeze, and I've got sociopathic thinking at my disposal. Now, we've got access to your brain. You know where so-and-so lives in this. You know their weak points. You know this, that, and the other. Now, you are in a reptilian environment. Now, they may not be reptiles to people with money because they can have both. They can put the money first, but also care some about the people. And so they may not be reptiles 100% to everyone, but they're a reptile to you. You have zero impact. You are in agony, and they feel nothing because you're not a human being to them. You are an object of shame that is numb. So you are a reptile to them. You are numb. You are not going to survive in a horde of crocodiles unless you fight back like a crocodile. Because crocodiles use fear to run, to fight, or to freeze. So this is your terrain, and I'm here for you. I'm 200 million years old. I'm the brain that kept you alive. If you weren't the first as a crocodile to get that fresh deer, you didn't eat. If you didn't fend off that baby crocodile and maybe even tear it to pieces, you didn't eat. I'm here for you when you're in a reptilian cult. When you're in a reptilian cult, when you are beyond the pale of being treated as a human being, I'm here for you. And I'm a reptile. I know how to deal with this world. You've got to hurt them so that they care not about you. They don't care about you. They care about their own pain. So if you hurt them, they will do what you need them to do so as not to hurt you. If you embarrass your family, who has disowned you because you were the sad rape story that they were committed to blocking out in their political career, if they disown you and you show up at a political event, they will give you $10,000. Not because you're a human being, but because they are terrified of the truth that you represent. The truth that they're a reptile, the truth that this cult doesn't know what it's doing, the truth that we are hypocrites. These truths don't like coming out, particularly in political campaigns, particularly in business meetings. So you can just show up and say, yes, I'm the daughter of Senator so-and-so and so, and they will suddenly, not because you're needing, not because you're hurt, not because you're a human being, but because you could damage their career, they will jump out of the woodworks. And they will do anything if you will go away. Now, if you push it too far, they'll probably kill you. Hire a hitman, shoot him, because you're not really worth more than about $50,000. But you see, they're millionaires, maybe $100,000. They'd never give up all their money for a human being. The money is more important. We all know that. But, if you find the sweet spot, maybe it's $100,000, maybe you have to dole it out over time. They will pay out large sums of money to suppress truth, to suppress the truth of their own feelings, blah, 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 blah. So, and to avoid dealing with this. So of course, this is the dynamic. This is the stupidity of dissociation. This is why you can tell an ignorant cult by the cruelty with which it treats its minorities. An ignorant cult doesn't understand that sociopathic behavior leads to sociopathic behavior. The sociopathic behavior of the cult leads to sociopathic behavior in the reptilian brainstem of the people being treated sociopathically. And what is sociopathic? It is acting in such a way that makes it harder for them to survive, feel secure, feel a sense of love and belonging, feel a sense of self-esteem. Makes it harder. When public money is spent to pass a law that says that homeless people can't sleep in their car, yeah, it kind of makes it harder to survive. When there aren't enough shelters, when public laws are passed to make sure that the homeless cannot build a 200 square foot home. In other words, a homeless person could apply and say, look, I do not have enough money to rent a 600, 1,200, 2,000 square foot home, but I don't need that. I can survive in a tent or a teepee or a yurt or a caravan or I can retrofit a shipping container and I can live in that just fine. And I can live in it with dignity and I can afford it and my Social Security will cover it, etc. I can't afford these rents. Can I have a permit from my government to survive? And they say, we're sorry, don't you understand? There's a minimum of 1,200 square feet, or we can't issue you a permit. What? Well, I can't afford 1,200 square feet. Well, I could do a tent. How about a 1,200 square foot tent? I could afford that. No, we have issued a law that says you cannot live in a tent. Ooh, that's going to take some time. What if I start building now and in 10 years I could maybe muster up and I'll start with 100 square foot, I'll move in, and then I'll keep building until you're satisfied. Because you want 1,200 square feet even though I need 200 square feet. How about I move into the 100 square foot room, then I'll build another one, and every year I will build another 100 square feet that I can afford until you, my government, are satisfied that I have a 1,200 square foot house, because this is for you. The government is never about the people. It's about satisfying you. You want a 1,200 square foot house. And it's like, no. You have to build the house in 1 year. And you have to build it to these standards. And the cost is going to be $400,000. But I can't afford that. Oh, well. You have to go out and disappear because you can't sleep in your car. There isn't enough shelters. We're going to shame you and this, that, and the other. And no one's going to give you a job if you're not clean, and you can't get clean without a house, and da-da-da-da-da. And by the way, you're a bit mentally disabled, and so, you can't really get a job anyway. Well, I could work for $3 an hour and do this. No. Minimum wage. No, you're useless. You have been rendered useless by your government. Now go and be useless, and then we'll spend tax money to harass you by the police. You see, this is not a very nice tale, is it? And it's the tale going on. I'm doing a documentary in Marin County. It's going on all over the United States. It's a story being played out as government money is used to create laws that dehouse millions of people and stress out tens of millions more. They stress out tens of millions more when a permit for a house costs more than the house of a place in Thailand. You see, if I go down to Marin County and say, hey, I'd like a permit to build my house, they will say, $30,000, please. It's like, no. You just have to come out and verify that this meets the codes. I've looked at all the codes. My architect knows the codes. You just have to walk over 2 miles from your government office and say, that looks as if it meets codes. Or maybe you can knock on my neighbor's door and say, do you mind if so-and-so moves in here with this house that seems to meet codes? And then you have to walk back and I'll buy you lunch. How about that? No. That would be too simple. We've got to slow things down for a couple of years. We've got to do this. We've got to waste your time as much as possible. So this is a story that creates pain. Now, what's important to understand with this pain thermometer is it's not incident-based. You see, in a chauvinistic culture where we focus on the dot, but not the pattern, because as all reality breaks down within a yin-yang, within a dualistic paradigm, it breaks down to black or white. Is it more black? Is it more white? Is it more yin? Is it more yang? Is it more feminine? Is it more masculine? The yang is about the detail, the moment, the particle. In the atomic structure, the yang is the electron and the proton. The space between is the feminine. The pattern is the feminine. Now, nobody's interested about the pattern. Nobody tracks that this homeless person walked here, and then they walked there, and then they walked there, and then they walked there. And they didn't have the right form for that, and they couldn't get a paper for that, and the office was closed over. No one's tracking the pattern. They want to track the incident. I followed protocol here. Now I have nothing to do with your overall pattern. And so pain is about the pattern. It's about the pattern of gap between the world we long for and need and the world we have. So I long to have someone tell me that I look great, but nobody's told me that today. So there's a gap. I long for it, but it's not happening. That's called pain, a little bit of pain. And I long to be treated for my humanity more than my money. But other than people that I've bought things from today, nobody's expressed really any interest in me. I long to feel like I'm important, not my money. But I have to conclude that without my money, none of these people would have talked with me at all. And I feel a little bit sad about that. And I long for a world where, particularly in a wealthy culture, I can drive around and people have dignity in homes. And I'm not seeing the same old faces with sadness and dissociation on their in their eyes, day after day after day, which means that tens of thousands of people are going by them day after day after day, and every single one of them are saying, these people are not my problem. And they are a problem, and they're not mine. That's what's being happened. I long for a world where these people are viewed as resources, as golden egg, as geese. And I long for a world that will invest $1 billion in the technology of turning traumatized people into highly functioning members of the culture, because 42% of our homeless are traumatized. That's what I long for. But I'm in a cult where if I write to my local mayor about homelessness, he won't reply to the email. Meaning, and he'll lie about it. So he'll send out emails to the whole town saying, we'd love to hear from you, here's your wonderful town news. And I say, what about this homeless person and this homeless person and this homeless person? He doesn't want to hear about that, because that's what I'm interested in talking about. And that's what these homeless people are interested in talking about. And it doesn't sound like a wonderful town that can drive by sociopathically this and that and the other. It doesn't sound wonderful when I talk to these people and understand their stories. It doesn't sound wonderful to me. Well, that's taboo. So again, you're not important. Me looking good is important. So if you make me look bad, we will get rid of you, just like the homeless. Aha. Well, I long for a world where my feelings are important because they're my feelings, not because I make you look good. But you're not in that world. You're in a world where if you don't make this and this and this person look good, you have zero value. And of course, the sociopath figures out how to do that. You know, in a sociopathic environment where you get the message, ding, 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 you have absolutely no value unless you can get people who have money and power and status to like you. And the only way they're going to like you is if you do this, 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 and this that is not you, that will make them look good, that will get them some more money. If you do this, they will say that you are a wonderful person. Now, what they mean is not that you are a wonderful person, is they mean that they will say you're a wonderful person if you meet these agendas of theirs that have nothing to do with your humanity or anyone else's or their own. They're just trying to get by in a sociopathic environment. So if you want to play the game, you too can pretend to be valuable, but nobody has any value. The mayor doesn't have any value except that he's mayor, and he wouldn't be mayor if he hadn't done a good job of making things sound good and suppressing the cultural secrets. He wouldn't have been mayor, because we refuse to elect people that tell the truth about a lot of these things. And we really punish people who try and do something about it or make us look too deeply inside, because that's the greatest taboo of all. But I want to live in a world where we look inside and this, yeah, but you're going to get punished for that. So I'm in pain. I'm in pain, 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 I'm in pain. There's huge gaps between the world that I long for and the world that I'm in. Between the family that I long for and the family that I'm in. Between the country that I long for and the country that I'm in. Between the government that I long for and the government that takes my money at gunpoint. Never try not paying your taxes and just saying, I don't like the way you're spending that money. My vote as a free citizen is not to fund you. I'd rather spend my money doing this. Well, that's fine. We will take all your possessions. We will throw you in prison. And you can decide whether or not you'd like to continue at a taxpayer expense of $80,000 a year with your refusal to give us your money. Or you can pay us half of what you make so that we can do the things that you don't want us to do. Well, I don't want that either, so I'm in pain. And I don't want to talk to women about how lonely and separate I feel and then be avoided as a loser. I want to be talking about how lonely and separate I feel and be included as someone who's telling the truth. I want this, but I have this. There's a gap. And that gap is called pain. And it is not separate pain. It is cumulative pain that leads to the sociopathic, to the reptilian intervention, to the to the trauma dissociation, the fight, flight. It is cumulative pain. It gets to a point, I can't take this pain any longer. And that's this point where I will do anything at all to avoid this pain. I will kill myself because I can't see how to be a nice person, doing this with anyone, in any other way. I don't want to hurt other people. And that's the only way I can get over this. I understand the opium addictive crisis. I know that's a very short-term solution. I'd rather die than be in this amount of pain. And I have no way out of this pain that I can think of. And here's where, it's worth noting that the conscious mind is in the nexus between the feminine of the inner world and the masculine of the outer world. And so, as Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag Archipelago, as Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, as the Buddha, Christ, the Dalai Lama, those who have transcended, meaning they with inner development, with inner work, one can expand one's muscle. Stephen Covey talks about it as the stimulus, or as the gap between stimulus and response. So, for some of us, if someone steps on our toe, we say, ow! And we have no control over that. There's no gap between stimulus, the toe stepping, and response, the ow. Or for some of us, like Donald Trump says in his book, The Art of the Deal, what I do is if anyone hurts me or slanders me or anything like this, I hurt them much more And this makes everyone scared of me. It's a good sociopathic protocol. If you're raised in a sociopathic environment and you learn that works, then this is a good protocol to threaten everyone. Like people would write little stories about Trump, and then 2 days later they'd get 2 inches of legal set for $380 million. And he'd say, you can write a retraction and apologize to me for writing your story, or you can be sued for $380 million. And that's that protocol of whatever someone does for me offends me, I'm going to get them 5 times worse. So that's reptilian thinking. That's fight thinking. Everyone's a threat. Everyone's a threat. But you have to understand that it takes a sociopathic environment. It takes a sociopathic environment to induce the reptilian brain, because it's not fun. Now, you may think, oh, it's great fun to dominate and humiliate and terrify and da-da-da. And it is, relative to feeling helpless. You see, relative to feeling helpless, but not relative to feeling joy, love, and amazing things. If you can feel joy, love, and amazing things, or feel vindicated, the joy, fun, and amazing things are more fun. But if you have to pick between being helpless and being vindicated, then being vindicated is more fun than being helpless and not helped. Helpless and not helped. So that's the dynamic that we're in. So when you see someone who's so excited about the vindication, you know that what they're excited about is that they've moved from feeling small and helpless and powerless to feeling powerful and important. And it's a great transition. It's the crocodile that was batted out of the way when they were small, because why would you feed children if you're a crocodile? You don't. You have a reptilian brain. Fight, and freeze. So you see a little baby crocodile, you knock it out the way because you want to get more food. But then the baby crocodile learns that it has to bully and get some food, and then once it's bigger, it can't be knocked out of the way, and it'll not hit you. And if it can get bigger than you, it'll bully the bully, and it'll survive. And this is wonderful. Evolution at its best. And so, but it's reducing the human consciousness. It's regressing the human consciousness back 200 million years ago to alligator brains. That's what we do when we create a sociopathic environment that is competent at inducing the reptilian brainstem. And the word for culture, of course, is tied in here. The word for culture is all about what induces a certain kind of growth. In a sociopathic cult, in a sociopathic culture, we induce large amounts of reptilian brain activity by scattering data in the consciousness of a reptilian nature. When you see the SWAT team on TV breaking down this and this perfectly normal person's door for political or TV effect, here's someone who would have answered their door, but no. Let's trash the house. Let's have 8 people. Let's point 6 machine guns at them. Let's slam them down on the ground to show that your government, is ready to intimidate you. If you make us look bad, if you do this little thing, etc., we're out to get you. What choice does someone receiving those images have but to say, aha, I see. You could have just knocked on the door, saved his house, and said, we disagree with this and this. You're a great person in these other areas. You haven't eaten 10 children recently. You haven't murdered so-and-so. You didn't kill us here. You didn't poison the water system. You're a great person in many ways. It's just that we don't like your pain management strategy in this one area. And so we're going to make an example of you. We're going to try and terrify as many people as possible. Now, we're doing a war on terror. Let's add a little bit of insanity. First we fight powder. Now we're fighting terror. A war on terror and a war on powder. Now we fight powder by creating lots of pain that means that people need more powder. That's our war on powder. And our war on terror is we terrify as many people as possible so that they won't terrify other people. That's our war on terror. So our goal is to be bigger terrorists than the terrorists, so that they'll be too terrified to terrify you. Except that that's not how viruses spread. If you terrify me and hit me with that virus, the law of viral pattern repetition is that emotions spread. So it's not good science. But we're not a scientific cult. Who said we were a scientific cult? We are a political. We are a dogmatic. We are a fanatical cult. We don't pay attention to scientists when it doesn't suit us. And this data is hitting the population daily, 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 daily. You are in a sociopathic cult. You are in a sociopathic cult. This is sociopathic. This is cult. Every time the cult power structure refuses to listen to your feelings, your needs, and makes it harder for you to survive, feel secure, have a sense of love and belonging, have a sense of esteem with peace and dignity, with ease. Every time your cult makes it harder, or you watch it making other people's lives harder, your fight, flight, freeze brain gets juice. The ultimate decider that's saying, which brain do we need to survive in this environment, is saying, okay, we need a bit more of the sociopathic brain because we're in a little bit more of a sociopathic environment. And of course, the sociopathic virus spreads. It doesn't disappear. The more people who are in the reptilian part of their brain, the more sociopathic behavior is out there. The more behavior that is out there, the more other people observe reptilian behavior. And the more they observe reptilian behavior, the more their reptilian brain comes online. This is the dynamic. And it's a very, very tricky dynamic to do anything about. Because it is true that in a reptilian environment, if you are the nice guy, you get slashed and burned. That's just the way it works. If you're the nice guy, if you're the empath in a reptilian environment, they decide you're safe to fight. You don't have to be run from because empaths aren't dangerous. They care about you. You don't have to be run from. You can be used and you can be fought. You can be used and you can be fought. So they use you and your pain goes up. And they use you some more and your pain goes up. And most likely what happens is at some point you flip into the reptilian brainstem. You've been used to manage their pain without empathy, without reciprocation. Here, I could use a little booty call. I could use a little night fuck, right? Oh, that feels great. Okay, bye. No interest in your feelings or anything like that. Even your orgasm is not really important. I'm a sociopath. I just wanted a quick fuck. And okay, I'll tell a few lies to get me through and not look like a bad person so that you feel like shit. Aha. Well, next time the person wants a little booty call, right? There's a little bit more sociopathic behavior. Fuck you. Who cares about your needs? You don't care about my needs, so the reptilian virus spreads. And this is a very, very important dynamic to track. All viruses spread, emotional, physical, mental viruses spread until they meet a force equal or greater to counter them. And so in this dynamic, either the reptile starts lifting into the empathic area of their brain, or they stay reptilian in a sociopathic paradigm with sociopathic usurous behavior. And other people around them will either reject them or wear them down into a similarly reptilian function. And we call this maturing, by the way. It's a very interesting thing that that we don't tend, if someone leaves their car door open, etc., we don't get upset that we live in a sociopathic culture and what are we going to do about it. We start haranguing the person for trusting other people. You fool. You don't understand that we're surrounded by reptiles? You idiot. Oh, I guess I'm an idiot because I thought human nature was somewhat decent. It's like, and so we have a threshold in our cult where you're basically attacked for trusting, caring, wanting to help people beyond a certain point. Now, below that, you're a jerk, but above that, you're a fool. And in this bandwidth, you are normal. No, those are homeless people. No, we're nice to the neighbors because they're neighbors. That's what we do in our cult. These are homeless people. You don't invite a homeless person to your home. You invite people who have homes to your home. It's just, you're a fool. Of course they stole from you. Of course you fool. It's like, I don't invite homeless people to my home. What kind of a idiot person are you? You can pretend that you're a nice person in other ways without, behaving like such a fool. My neighbor was quick to point out that I should, under no circumstances, when I was talking with her, we've both got giant houses and lands and stuff like that, and she said, absolutely not. Don't do it. Don't give them a place to camp or anything. Don't do it. It's a terrible idea. Well, do you want to meet them? Are they human? It's a nice woman who needs this and that. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're a fool. You're a fool. I'll be nice to you as your neighbor as long as you don't break the neighborhood taboos. And one of them, it seems, is being nice to homeless people. This, by the way, a great card-carrying liberal feminist, blah, 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 who tries to be very nice and warm, except when it comes to helping a homeless person. And so we have this pain dynamic. And this is problematic because of the human ego. It's problematic because of the human ego. The human ego is a zoom-in lens. And the benefit of a zoom-in lens, much like a sensitive microphone, is you can see detail and you can study. So the human ego is a powerful tool for learning, for studying patterns, for experiencing, to a certain extent, an illusion of freedom. Because much like, if you imagine the kind of technology that played an entire DVD in one continuous second, meaning every single scene was projected on the movie, and you can have a sophisticated consciousness that is so sophisticated that it can discern the literally 280 million different scenes, each framed, the different frames that all make up the DVD. And you can see each one, and it can discern them all simultaneously, and done. In 1 minute, the whole DVD is understood, right? Because you've got a sophisticated processor. Now, we will have computers that can do this in a matter of time, but we can't do this. So we watch the DVD bit in a zoom-in lens. And then if you really want to get into the meta conversation of the DVDs, something I like to do, is you pause the moment. Well, look at what she just said there. What's the implication of that? And what about this? And if the reason that if the reason that girl got punished in that school is this, doesn't that seem to suggest that? And if that is true, doesn't that lead to this? So isn't the teacher doing the very thing they claim not to be doing by isn't that odd? Then you move the movie forward a few more frames. Then why did they say that? Look at that person. They're clearly crying. How sociopathic do you have to have that person all walk by them? Now, this movie is telling you this is the cult. It's a representation of the cult. It's communicating this is the cult you live in. because that looks about normal. Yeah, that's about what I would expect if I was on a high school playground, is if so-and-so's crying, people would steer away rather than say, how can we help? And yeah, I would expect that given that they're only children and they're not making money yet, there would be such a low ratio of teachers that no teacher would understand or notice that it was going on. Because how do you notice it's going on if you've got a ratio of one grown-up to 50 kids? Seems like, yeah, that was exactly what would go on. And then what's if we understand that, if we all know that that's going on in our high schools today, what does it mean that none of us mind, or that we're sending a new generation of innocent children to that environment? What does that say? And then so this is how our ego can function as a zoom-in learning lens. What is going on? Why is this? What's going on there? And why is that like that? Wait a minute, you said this, but now you're doing this. That's a zoom-in lens. And so the ego is good for learning. Now, the vulnerability of the ego comes apparent here. Now, watch this. This is a lens here. This is a lens. And this is reality here. Now, there's stuff out here, and there's stuff out here, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist within the attention span of the screen. This is the ego right here. Now, when you've got this, you can pause this, you can argue, you can say, oh, he's too long-winded, you can pause, and you've got perspective. You've got perspective because this is a little bit of your reality. But what happens when we zoom way in here? What happens when you zoom way in here? If this is all that you see, this is the entirety of what you see. I'm going to zoom out again. If that's the entirety of what you see, then you lose perspective. You become overwhelmed. The zoom-in lens can't see anything other than darkness. Now, because you've got perspective, you're not in this is called trauma. It's called overwhelm. It's called flooding. Flooding, oversaturation, trauma, etc. There's so much data there. It becomes the entirety of your reality. Now you're stuck because you don't know where to navigate, because you don't have perspective. Now, when you see the little dot of the human ego on the DVD of the human lifetime, the little dot of the human ego on the DVD of the cult, the little dot of the human ego on the DVD of the family, you realize that the world, the larger self, the larger organism of which we are a part, and if you don't think we're a part of this organism, just try cutting yourself off from the organism and see how long you survive. You are intricately connected in more than 100 million ways in this moment with all that is. Now, our cult, of course, does this very bizarre thing by splitting information in half and saying that bit doesn't exist. And that's one of the things that in a chauvinistic cult, we focus on the individual rather than the group. And so in that dynamic, we tune out our interconnectivity with more than 100 million connection points with our environment. I mean, just think of sight alone. It's a relationship with the objects around us of which we are a part of. I'm looking out at trees. They're providing this. I'm not making oxygen. They are. So if I think that I have nothing to do with trees, I can happily cut them down under the influence of that delusion. But it becomes harder to breathe, bit by bit by bit. More asthma, more lung cancer, it becomes harder to breathe. And it's like, where does that happen? We're independent. We're individual. I cut that tree down. It has nothing to do with me. And this delusion starts to fade. You can only entertain a delusion so far before the faulty behavior stemming from a delusion catches up with you. And that's how the ego learns. It's like, oh, I cut down all the trees for money because not only are people less important than money, trees are less important than money. I've got lots of paper now, but I'm having a hard time breathing. The ego is in this large domain of the psyche, of the lifetime, so all of memory, and that's a big thing. And the ego is in the larger terrain of the species, of the planet. It's in relationship with its ecology. That's a big deal. Now, within these larger circles, you've got whole regions of pain, whole regions in which you've got whole regions in which everything the ego can see in that domain, because the ego is a zoom-in lens, is painful. It's painful and painful and pain. And I look here and it's pain, and it's here and it's pain, and it's here and it's pain, and it's here, it's pain. It's like, if in a really painful movie where for 30 minutes, nothing good happens. So every time you open your eyes, it's like, oh, so now they've raped another child. Like, I can't take it. So I'm going to turn this movie off. It's too depressing. You can't turn your life off because it's too depressing. But people do, of course. That's what suicide is. I'm going to turn it off. It's too depressing. But that's the only way out, is to snuff out the light. When you look here and it's painful, and here and it's painful, and here, and I'm surrounded by pain. We have these domains in our life, in our family, in our cult, in our history, in our world, in our environment, where the pain is too big. And nothing, wherever we turn, it's just right in your face. And that's the problem. Because try and get perspective when you got a view like this, and it's timeless. You lose sense of time when you're that flooded. It's like every moment feels like an eternity because you've got no perspective. To have perspective, you need to see 2 second hands, and you need to see the progression. When you're flooded, pain, 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 pain. And you're in a sociopathic environment, there's no one to call. It's so interesting. We were at Kaiser the other day, and we'd opened the window, and the dog had water, and our little Pomeranian is sitting in the car, and I need to get a cast material. And it's a little bit of a toss-up with Kaiser, because one of the big questions is, how small are they going to make the humanity in me feel before I get something from my body? Because they're pretty decent on the body. They're hard on the psyche. Anyway, it's a matter, we sit down, the security guard comes in about 5 minutes later and says, you're going to have to move your truck into the shade or do something, because we can't have the dog overheating. And it is of no point explaining that the dog is fine, that this is, the window's open, the water is there. No, dogs are very important. Now, I can go to 1,000, if not 2,000 people in my town that are overheating, that have alcohol, that are really at risk. And there's no one to call because they're human beings. And, and these are just one reminder. So as I'm being given the runaround about why I can't be given cast material and why we can't do this, and no, of course, we don't have any time to see you, and no, why would we? No, the doctor has to do that. I don't know why the doctor didn't do that. Who knows? We have to follow protocol. Bottom line is, we are not going to help you with what you're asking for in any way whatsoever, because protocols are way more important than you. Well, I can buy it on Amazon. Go ahead. We don't care about you. We just have to follow protocols. And so off you go. But your dog, my goodness, my goodness, who knows what the dog might be feeling. And so there are these points of pain where the ego lens gets turned to a region of the psyche. And it's too painful. It is too fucking painful. Now, this gets back to the area of talking about the accumulation. It's not the detail. It's not the fact that the Kaiser nurse didn't smile at me. It's not the fact that I'm getting the clear message that my dog is way more important, than I am. It's not the fact that I can clearly create a rational narrative of how this is good for my health. And nobody's interested in the rational narrative. They're interested in the protocol. It's not the fact that I have to drive to my hospital for health care when I should be immobilized. That's, and nobody's concerned in the slightest with that, because you could call them up and say, would you mind stopping by my house since you've said I should keep this immobilized? How about you come to me? That would be an idea, wouldn't it? Because that would keep me No. We don't do that. It's not the fact that, vast sums of money are taken to do this and this and this. It's not it's the accumulation. It's the accumulation of physical pain followed by an insane amount of indignity, etc., in your hospital, or emotional pain followed by an insane amount of indignity with your therapist or with your relationship partner, or financial pain followed by an insane irrationality around financial pain. Financial pain means I need money right now. Could I get a loan? Well, we only loan money to people who don't need money. I see. Well, if I didn't need money, why would I get a loan? Well, people might want to buy this and that and the other, but you understand we don't just loan money out to people who need it. That would be a bad credit risk. And you do understand that we're not in this business to help you. We're in this business to make money. And so if you don't have money, why would we loan you any? I mean, yes, we say we want to help, but what we mean is we want to make lots of money. And if you are a good candidate for that, then we would like to help ourselves make lots of money. And if you get some along the way, then that's fine. So it's not just this one thing. It's the accumulation over time of a continuous series of messages that have huge gaps between this is what I long for and this is what's happening. I long to have a fully functioning right arm again. I long to have a landlord that when he shows up doesn't depend on me for 4 hours of labor because he's too cheap to bring either a new washer machine or to hire someone to bring the old one up these huge concrete steps. And so he continuously taps me. And then when I get hurt, in this case, the washing machine falling down on me where she was supposed to be holding, when I get hurt, he disappears. I mean, that would be really nice, to have someone that when you help them doing their job in their role, that they thank you and then they help you if something goes wrong in that. That would be empathic. So we're in sociopathic terrain because despite being rich, when you grow up in a cult that values you for your money, you can have lots of money but still be worried about losing it or losing status. So he has lots of money, but he doesn't have any joy or ease in spending it. So he's got a bad back, he's quite rich, but he'll drag over a $200 washing machine and then have to replace it a few years later because it's, he always buys the cheapest thing available. He'll do that and hurt his back and endanger me just to save $200. And I'd love to be in a cult that didn't raise men like that raised men to know that they weren't limited to the value of their bank accounts. But it has raised him like that. That's not fun. I look at him and it's like, are you crazy? If I had a bad back, I don't have as much money as you have, but I hire help for something like this because I'm not quite as hooked in on all that. But you are. What do I do since that's not the landlord that I want? It's the landlord that I have. And it's like when this culture, there's so many things like, well, why don't you move? Yes, but that's not my ideal way of solving the problem, since I'm very happy with the amount of trees I see, for example. So there's very few houses I could move to that have a double car garage in this area that have this amount of trees and stuff. So I have to decide. Trees and privacy, crappy landlord, etc., etc. So there's a gap. And it doesn't, these things don't just fix themselves always. And it's like, okay, well, you could create another, I'm sure that you could spend 3 months and find this. Yes, I could spend 3 months. But that's not how I want to spend 3 months. And so there's this gap. And it's the cumulative gap that is the issue in pain. Because it's the combination of a painful elbow, a bad nightmare, a call from another homeless person who's having trouble with the system, and I'm doing a documentary on that. And so, just saying, oh my goodness, it's like I'm in pain and these people are in so much more pain, and so it's the cumulative pain. And this is where consciousness control is. This is where addiction is consciousness control. Addiction is the control of consciousness with the goal of keeping it out of the region of the psyche that is in pain because it's too painful. So this is like what we do in a scary movie with a DVD player. We're watching, oh, that's cute, oh, isn't that's hot, that's romantic, oh, that's scary, oh, it's getting worse, doesn't it get any there? Fast forward to the next thing. Gosh, thank goodness, all that horrible music they play, they're just about to murder that poor innocent girl. I don't want to watch the poor innocent girl get murdered. Why do they have to stick that in my movie? And so you fast forward the movie over the pain point. This is what addiction is, when you have to do it. When the pain gets so much you can't look at it. Now here's where it gets interesting in terms of compulsion and communicate and consciousness control, is that with consciousness control, you've got to solicit more and more help from your environment. Why? Well, one of the ways that the ego's attention is drawn around within the psyche is through corollary sensory perception. So here's how it works. So for example, I'm 8-9 years old. I have a dissociative family, and so thank heavens I have a cat, because my cat is more emotionally present for me, more stable, more sane than either of my parents. So I have a cat that is a substitute for healthy parenting. So I really need that cat. And this cat has a deep bond with me. This cat, and as most of you know, cats do not like water. Cats do not like water. But this cat, whether it can feel my need as a 7, 8, 9-year-old boy, this cat, when I go swimming, will swim out in the water to be with me. This cat is not behaving like a cat. It is a cat that's behaving like a dog. And lucky for me, because it's the only sentient being who's stable in my world. And my dad decides to move. And there's a story about why he's moving, and it's an intricate story, but one of the few women that I had a somewhat stable relationship, being my 3rd grade teacher, died in a car accident. So that's the stable person. Now, the school doesn't know how to deal with trauma. Now, I start acting up because I don't know how to deal with grief, because I don't know how to deal with feelings, because I've got 2 sociopathic parents who are dissociated from their feelings. Now, they're doing very good with a mental program, meaning they're trying to do the right thing from their minds. but they can't form emotional bonds that are stable and safe because they can't go into their own feelings without getting flooded and reactive. And so their number one rule in the family is no one feels deep feelings. And most importantly, no one makes mom and dad feel any deep feelings. And so when you're trying to please your parents by not having deep feelings, and one of your few resources of safety dies in a car accident, and you can't feel deep feelings because this terrifies mom and dad, what do? You act out. You start controlling consciousness. We call it OCD. We call it hyperactive, is what it was called in my generation. I got hyper. Well, this was a problem for the school. Believe me, it was a problem for me. I'm caught between a rule that says you cannot have any feelings and a reality that is inducing some of the most horrific feelings that would be there if I was able to have feelings. And I'm caught in a cult that doesn't understand trauma, that doesn't understand grief, and that has created a veil called a stereotype that boys don't really have feelings in this cult, apparently. We're one of the few cults in human history where boys don't really have feelings. There have been 10,000 cults in human history. Most of those cults acknowledge that men had feelings, but apparently not in our cult. We're way too sophisticated for that. And so boys don't have feelings. It's not da-da-da-da-da-da. So I'm flying off the wall. Well, in a school that doesn't know how to deal with the trauma it induces and does not repair, it has a great solution. It's the same solution as the politician who gets rid of his drunken daughter who was a rape survivor or whatever. They get rid of me. So they expel me because I'm too hyper. And so my dad decides, okay, fuck this school, we're going to England. Because, anyway, he picks us up, and I have one more secure attached relationship, which is my cat. He has no interest in the cat. He doesn't understand feelings. He doesn't understand the bond. He has no awareness of what's going on here. And so he doesn't want to listen to the screaming and the thing around the cat, because I actually have strong feelings about the cat who doesn't punish me for having feelings. So he lies to me and says, fine, we'll take the cat. Just shut up and pack and da-da-da-da-da. I also had strong attachment to things. Because when you don't have safe, sane people, things become very attractive because they don't lie. Staplers don't lie, and you don't ask a stapler, how many staples you have in there, and it says none, and you lift it up and it's got 200 staples in there. And they say, well, don't sass me. How dare you open up and see actually what's going on here? Staplers don't punish you for figuring out what's going on. They staple things. Every time you press it, it's like, yes, a sane object in my reality is wonderful. So I became very fond of this cat. I became very fond and attached to things. And pack ratting kind of dynamic comes in, because everything that did reliable things, this comforted me, that there were things that behaved consistently, unlike parents. And so this was wonderful. Teachers were dying, other teachers were expelling me. Things were important. But of course, my dad knows that money is more important than human beings, and he does not want to pay any luggage extra to take the family to England. So he lies to me about that as well. Fine, we'll take your things. We'll take your things. We'll take the cat. And then he just rushes the family off to England. And now I am an object of curiosity, because at 8, 9 years old, I just talk even more. I've lost my American accent to some extent because of the humiliation. But suddenly I'm an object. My things have been vanished. My cat is nowhere to be found. And Dad is, of course we can't take this. He's not apologizing for lying. He's not apologizing for breaking the attachment. He's not apologizing for his ignorance. He is not apologizing for the grief or anything that this is going to have as a long-term impact. He is making it clear that if I bring up the truth of my feelings, he is going to punish me. And he is also feeling very aggrieved. He is blaming me for this because he's saying that if you weren't so dumb as to have fixations around pieces of balsa wood, that rotten model you made, it was stupid. If you weren't so dumb as to do that, if you were more mature and didn't realize that this is just a cat, cats die all the time in the world, then I wouldn't have to lie. It's your fault. You have done this because you're so juvenile. Because, and if you hadn't been so hyperactive, we wouldn't have had to be, In other words, it's the child's fault. So any acknowledgement of the feelings is going to bring the entire blame and shame of the family system on my head. What am I going to decide at 8, 9 years old? To start having feelings for the first time or to bury them deeper? Now, the burying deeper, of course, has consequences. You can't learn regulation. You can't learn, gradient attachment patterns like this one over here, where you're attached and then you're attached a little bit more and then a little bit more and then a little bit less. You don't learn gradient attachment things. You have the attachment snuffed out of you. Your teacher is, there she is, she's going to see you tomorrow, and then she's dead. And then there's no discussion about it. There's your cat, and then gone. No discussion. You don't have a template for gradient attachments. You didn't have a gradient attachment relationship with your parents where you're getting a little bit more nervous and so they're a little bit more responsive, and then you're a little bit more panicky and they're more responsive and they're there for you. It's like, no, you connect and then you need them and they hit you and say, not right now. And you have to dissociate. You have to blow a circuit. You have to get consciousness out of the domain because it's a tailspin. The more you cry and weep about the pain, the more you are punished and shamed for crying and weeping, which creates more pain, which creates more crying and weeping. You've got to get out of the cycle. You've got to dissociate. Now, as soon as you dissociate, suddenly, in an extreme way, you are now weird. That guy's a bit weird. He has a blank face. His voice doesn't have a lot of an affect. Yeah, that's what dissociation is. You traumatize a child into dissociation, and they don't have much of an affect because that's what they disconnected from in themselves to please the abuser, to please the abuser. When the giants will not attune to the infant, when the giants will not attune to the infant must attune and care for the giants. And it's too heavy. It's too painful. It's too depressing, biologically, emotionally, physically, etc., for a child to care for giants. Now, there need to be pain partitions. There need to be partitions, walls. The family helps to define them. Don't you talk about Uncle Kenny. Don't talk about that at dinner. No, don't you sass your mother. There are all these walls. And as a child, you understand that they're irrational. You understand that the reason you can't sass your mother is she's just lied to you and she doesn't want to apologize for lying. And so, since she's not big enough to acknowledge that, and since she's not going to acknowledge that, and since she wants to feel superior, and since her mother did it to her, well then, why not just say, how dare you, and tirade and bully the child into compliance with the lie. The lie that I'm this wonderful, loving parent that you should be grateful for. Now, you feel hatred for, but you should be grateful for. A big misunderstanding of the scientific instrument of the human heart. You do this to 1,000 children, you will induce depression, trauma, PTSD, and hatred, as well as helplessness and despair and attention deficit disorder in a majority of those 1,000 children. You treat 1,000 children this way, you will induce these symptoms in a majority of the 1,000 children. To turn around then and blame the child in a similar way of injecting arsenic into 1,000 people and then blame them for dying is a profound expression of ignorance, a profound burden of shame, a request for insanity. I don't think people understand exactly how often a child is asked to go crazy to protect the lies in the abuser and the parent. But these walls go up and they form habits. Basically, the habits are habits of pain. I realize that my ear gets pulled every time I make Dad feel small, so I've got to figure out what makes Dad feel small. Oh, he feels small when I make him feel feelings. He feels feelings when I have feelings. I guess I better shut my feelings down because that makes Dad feel small. I see. Okay. Now he feels this. Okay. I've got to learn that rule. So I've got to do all of these things. Now, I've also got to hide it because even though I have to figure this out, this is what makes Dad feel small, and then I've got to not do it so that he doesn't feel small. He feels small if I tell him, I'm doing all of these things for you, Dad, so you don't feel small. How's that? No, I lie about this because if I told you the truth, you'd feel small and then you'd pull my ear. Then I do this thing over here because you feel sad and small about that. And I don't want to make you feel sad, Dad, so I do this thing over here. Then I do this other thing like here. Then I look dumb. Because you feel important. When I'm dumb and I'm a fool, when I'm goofing around and I pretend that I don't know anything, you feel superior. So I do that so that you can feel superior to me, Dad, because that makes you happy. I can't explain this code outright because then he'd feel like a complete fucking idiot, which is what he is. When it comes to parenting skills, he is a complete and utter moron. But he doesn't want to feel like a complete and utter moron, 1. 2, the amount of effort it would take for him to become competent as a parent is not the amount of effort he wants to put into the job. So he is unwilling to become competent, but he is also unwilling to acknowledge the impact of his incompetence. And so the only way to eke out some sense of approval is to help him mask his own incompetence and blame myself for his incompetence and not tell him about it. Then he can feel good about himself based on this delusion. That is a heck of a lot for a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old to carry. Parents ask their kids to carry it every single day. Therapists ask their patients to carry this. Lovers ask their partners to carry about this. Now, you realize that the reason we're late is because I didn't want to say anything, because you have such a reactivity to being told something. Because you say, what do you think? You think I don't know that? In other words, you've got a loop inside your mind that anytime someone tells you something, you hear, you're stupid, you didn't know that. Now, I'm not thinking you're stupid, you didn't know that. I'm thinking this would be a helpful time to tell you that we're starting to run late. But I know from experience that the anger and hurt you will feel by translating me saying, just to remind you, dear, about the time, that the anger and humiliation you feel when I do that is way less than the anger and humiliation you feel when we're late. So even though I knew we would be late, and even though I knew you would blame me for being late,